and relationships because of...
No, I give you six examples, and I said that wasn't exhaustive, and that remains the position.
More, if there
yeah, well,
more
I say,
that,
and I explained to you as well that there were sensitive discussions.
Nice to see the Tory government and the SNP getting along like a house on fire as always. Hello then, I do hope you're all well. Now, do you remember the last Scottish Select Committee meeting where our Smiling Jack, the Secretary of State for Scotland, got into a bit of a grump about the Scottish government, the SNP, because he felt they had undermined the UK government on the world stage, so to speak. I think you'll find, Alister Jack, you guys don't need any help in undermining yourselves, as you've been doing a fantastic job of that all by yourselves. But Scotland's least popular MP, they're beautifully known as Douglas Dross, in Monday's Scottish Select Committee meeting decided to pick up on this and ask for examples of the SNP being very naughty boys and girls. Well, Smiling Jack came prepared and had convincing, unequivocal evidence that had Nicola Sturgeon and other SNP MPs and SNPs banter rights and also being traitors to their country and should be dragged kicking and screaming to Traitors' Gate to take their punishment. Now, this is no laughing matter, SNP members and supporters up in Scotland. So no laughing. This is very damaging evidence that can bring down governments, you know.
Well, I'll give you... I mean, I said 5 or 6, and I did obviously think about that and expect that question. I expected from the chairman at the beginning. I think he probably was heading in that direction, but we didn't quite get there. And it's a fair question. I mean, I am reluctant to get into the details of specific discussions that have taken place, because you'll appreciate they can be in sensitive areas with ministers and overseas government ministers and extra, etc. But to try and give as clear a picture as possible, I do have, as I say, pre-prepared some answers to that, and I will rattle through them so there can be no, So the first one is in Washington, Nicola Sturgeon, who may be a person of interest to this committee. Nicola Sturgeon was clear that she discussed the Constitution with the US Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman during a visit to Washington, D.C. in 2022, when she tweeted that she had, and I quote, discussed the situation in Ukraine and the resulting refugee crisis, the Northern Ireland Protocol, and the constitutional future of the United Kingdom during a meeting. In Paris, Angus Robertson, and this is a Scottish Government Freedom of Information release, which I have with me, but it's easily attainable. During a meeting with the French EU minister, Mr. Robertson discussed the EU Erasmus scheme and the UK Turing scheme, and he commented that there was no, I quote again, no alternative other than Scotland to be part of the EU again. Such criticism of the UK policies clearly undermines our relationship with international partners. Poland, Ivan McKee. Mr. McKee said at a trade event in Poland that was attended by a European Secretary of State in a Ministry of Economic Development and Technology that Brexit was a mistake. He looked forward to Scotland joining the EU as a full member in due course and showing the rest of the UK the benefits of membership. And there are other examples, very briefly. There was a minister responsible for EU issues where Mr. Robertson described Brexit as a calamity, said it posed additional challenges for Scotland, not least because Scotland was pro-EU. At a St Andrew's Day reception in the European capital, Mr. Robertson said that Scotland would rejoin the EU as an independent nation and criticised the impact of the EU exit on student exchange programmes to Scotland. And finally, there are many others, as I say, in addition, in an FOI release at the end of November showed the Scottish Government offices overseas have been used to correspond with the EU on constitutional matters which are reserved. And again, that's freedom of information, so you can get hold of that if you need to. So there's 6 examples, which is what I promised you last time. And there are others that involve more sensitive discussions that were taking place. And as I say, what we want to do is to facilitate the Scottish Government on trade and culture and other things to go and talk to other governments, but not to go and talk about matters that are reserved, like the Constitution or foreign affairs. Or whether or not they want to have Trident at Faz Lane. These matters are reserved.
Absolutely shocking behaviour from our former First Minister, tweeting about certain conversations while in Washington. What have you got to say for yourself, Nicola Sturgeon? Our Smiling Jack is on to you. He's watching you. Angus Robertson, how dare you speak to the French about the monumental stupidity we've done to ourselves and talk about EU things like Erasmus scheme and UK things like the Turing scheme. You are a Ramona traitor and do not recognise the benefits of placing economic sanctions on ourselves can bring by isolating ourselves from the world, Angus. Now, the chair, Pete Wishart, is now going to do the right thing, make a grovelling apology and say how sorry they are and thanking our superior Smiling Jack for showing him the error of their ways.
Could I just briefly come back to what you said about these six examples?
Yes.
You described them as blatant breaches.
I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
It sounded pretty much like meagre fare. You know, a tweet from Nicola Sturgeon, Ivan McKee saying Brexit is a mistake. When everybody in Scotland thinks, or most people in Scotland think Brexit is a mistake. So, surely, I know this. The press will now be going through these in great detail. But come on, Secretary of State.
You won't get any agreement.
Anybody who's asked a question about Brexit from Scotland is pretty likely to say it's a mistake.
No, I say you're not going to get any agreement from the panel on that. I mean, it's absolutely to talk about, as I pointed out, for her to talk about the constitutional future of the United Kingdom, her quote, not mine, that undermines Scotland as part of the United Kingdom, and I think
we've had this huge fallout because of this. We've had that letter and a fallout in relationships because of.
No, I gave you six examples, and I said that wasn't exhaustive, and that remains the position. More, yeah, well, I say, and I explained to you as well that there were sensitive discussions, minister to minister, and therefore they wouldn't be published because they're part of the Foreign Office's work. But it remains the case that there are no short of examples of when this is happening, and I think you probably know as well as I do that it's going on, because I've just given you plenty of examples that it's going on, and it is wrong to do it. It undermines Scotland's place.
Well, I'm grateful to that, and I'm pretty certain after you've given us these examples, people will be scouring through them now just to see what the impact and the damage that has done to UK relationships across the world. We'll leave it at that this time.
Well, let's leave it at that, but let's agree that the important thing is that when the UK Gov overseas is promoting Scotland and working with the Scottish Government and SDI, that it does so in the areas that are devolved, because that's what the Scotland Act was set up to create, was for us to work together, and where things are devolved, the devolved administrations can set up to do them better. But when it comes to matters relating to defence, foreign affairs and the Constitution, they're reserved. And you will never find me giving any ground on that.
I think we'll leave it to others to discuss whether it's blatant breaches or meagre fare.
Something tells me our chair, Pete Wishart, wasn't too impressed with our Smiling Jack's executive journalism. Something tells me that our Pete Wishart isn't about to soil his pants at any moment and allow his knees to start knocking in fear. Absolutely hilarious, I have to say. Is our Smiling Jack suggesting that while any SNP, MP or SNP are on visits to other countries and subjects pop up that they're not supposed to talk about, and they have to say to them, sorry, I cannot get involved in that conversation because our Secretary of State of Scotland might have a hissy fit and have me hung, drawn and quartered at Traitors Gate, because it's not my job to embarrass the UK government. It's their job, and I don't want to step on their toes. But anyway, what do you guys think? Has our Smiling Jack got a point? Or is he just making a mountain out of a molehill? What do you guys think? Let me know down below, and until the next time I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.